Hey everyone, Jesse here again. Quick update on the Jaguar. Got the motor about 90% done. A couple of ancillaries and things like that to put on. So water pump, some of the oil pipes. But for the most part, it's back together. So we're going to start moving on to other parts of the project. So hopefully this is where it gets a little bit more interesting than just constantly yakking about, oh, building the motor. So yeah, it's the end of June, so July timeframe we're going to look at probably rebaselining the project. I know I keep talking about rebaselining, so we got to do it. We got to figure out what the new schedule looks like. So I might add a little bit. In cost to try to buy back some schedule. So we'll do some analysis of alternatives on some of the transmission ideas I had. So that's hopefully where I could buy back a lot of the schedule without. You know, what's the difference between buying a rebuilt transmission or a new transmission as opposed to rebuilding one, and how much time is that going to save without having to learn how to do all that? I've never done a transmission before, so part of this project was to learn that, but I think I might just press that off for another project, which is perfectly fine. I like doing this stuff, you know, so I'll eventually get into one, but we'll see. Anyways, I spent a lot of this month working on the Lincoln and just doing outdoor stuff like tubing and things. But so the 95 Lincoln that I've got, the ABS sensor for the wheels is no longer in production. You can't go buy the part. So I wanted to kind of explain how I went about repairing mine, being that I couldn't find one in the junkyard to pull the sensor from, and I can't buy them. So this is how I replaced the non-existent ABS sensor on the Lincoln 95 Mark VIII. Okay guys, the sensor for the Lincoln Mark VIII, this is a 1995, is just underneath the bumper in the front here. So you disconnect that, and I just use a regular everyday multimeter, nothing fancy. And on the ground side, it's kind of a little much, but I just put an alligator clip on that. Then I just took a piece of wire with an alligator clip, and I'll just alligator clip there until I can solder an alligator clip on here to make it a little bit easier. But on the far side of this wire, I just have a little pin attachment, right? So I'll take that, put it into the far side of the sensor here on the Lincoln. So what you're looking here for is I put just the pin connector in here, and I got my ohms meter, and you're just looking to see if you get a change in resistance. So these are usually like around 1100 or so, could be 1400 or so, I forget the exact number, but you're looking for something other than infinite ohms or 0 ohms while looking at the sensor, right? Because I don't want to change the sensor if it's not bad. There's a lot of extra work I need to do. So I'm going to check out, make sure that I see 0 ohms here, so I know that my meter is working. So there we go, we have 0 ohms. So I'll try to zoom in on the meter so you can see what I'm looking at here. Okay, so I've zoomed in on the meter, and again, I'm just checking for continuity to make sure my meter reads something other than infinite ohms. So we got 0 ohms, and now I'm going to just touch the other side of the connector here, and I don't get any change. I don't get any change in resistance as I'm touching the other wire. So either the sensor's bad or the wiring's bad. I'm touching all the things. So yeah, it's trying to do something. You're seeing there 6 mega ohms, 2 mega ohms, you know, so the sensor is definitely bad. 6 mega ohms, 17 mega ohms, infinite, right? So no good, sensor's bad. So now you can actually, now you know that you have the data that you need to repair your ABS light and what sensor is bad. Here's the sensor I'm going to replace the Mark VIII sensor with. It is from a I think early 2000s Ford Crown Victoria. Don't quote me on that. It's from a Ford Crown Vic. I don't remember the year. I didn't pay attention to that. I was specifically looking just at the head of the sensor and making sure that that looks very similar to what I needed. It was impossible to find this sensor for the Mark VIII. Nobody has it in stock. They don't make it anymore. There was no Mark VIIIs in the junkyards that had the sensors left. So we are now at the point where we need to make something work so we have the ABS light go off and we can pass inspection. So if you notice, ignore the head and the fact that the metal sleeve's missing. This is the Lincoln Mark VIII sensor. It was rusted in, so I had to do a little bit of persuasion to get it out. But you can see the sensor head itself is the same sensor. It's the same length, and it's the same back end. But where it differs is in the wiring, right? So you can see if I hold these sensors at the same spot, where the mounting pieces for the hub is longer for the Crown Vic, and the actual wire itself is much longer for the Lincoln. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this sensor off here. The Mark VIII sensor is going to get cut there, and we're going to splice it onto the good sensor here. And so just so that we're sure, now I checked these while I was at the junkyard as well, but just to make sure, we're going to check them here in the garage so you can see what a good sensor should read. So again, we're using the same setup. Put it on ohms. Okay, so now we've got the sensor again, and I always like to touch my leads together to make sure that the leads are working properly, and I'm getting roughly 0 ohms. Now when I connect to the other side of the connector in here, I'm now getting 1.28, 1.30 kilo ohms. That is what you should be expecting from these sensors. So that tells me that this sensor from the junkyard is good. And now we're going to swap it over. And when we're done swapping it over, we'll do another resistance check. Okay, so we got the repairs done, and this is a coax cable from the original Mark VIII. And the Crown Vic had twisted pair. So if you know the difference between the two, is coax has a outer wire and an inner wire separated by a dielectric, and the outer wire is usually ground, the inner wire is usually positive. So I just simply took the twisted pair, black I'm assuming is ground, which is common color, white is tannish, is I'm assuming positive. I don't think with this type of sensor here, since it's a VR type sensor, I don't think it's going to matter. We're going to get a signal pulse either way. So anyways, what we have done is repaired the cable. It's just got some electrical tape over it, and under the electrical tape is also shrink wrap, so shouldn't get any water in there, is what I'm hoping here. Just trying to make this last as long as I can so I don't have to do it again. And then again, we'll go ahead and do an ohms check on it. Alright, so I've got the sensor reconnected, and I'm going to make sure that the meter is reading correctly, so infinite ohms when it's open, 0 ohms on a short, and now we'll touch the pin. And we should read right about 1.3, 1.13, so there you go. We have our working sensor, so let's go ahead and install it on the car and see if this gets rid of the ABS light. Alright guys, well, it looks like the ABS light has remained off. We're not having any brake issues, and we're ready to roll. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed the work on the Lincoln. Maybe gave you some ideas on what you can do to repair yours. If you own a 90s or 80s cars, a lot of these parts are just not being made anymore. You got to start thinking outside the box. What else is there that can be modified? Sometimes you actually just got to even build the parts yourself. Another interesting thing that happened this last weekend, if you're interested in car events and things, Goodwood Festival of Speed had a 23-year-old record broken by an electric vehicle. If you're interested, go check out the Goodwood Festival YouTube channel. They have the whole good Festival of Speed cover there. It's really good stuff. Well, that's it for today, so I'll leave you guys on a joke. Two goldfish are in a tank. One turns to the other and says, "Do you know how to drive this thing?"